She looked like a quiet widow, the kind people barely noticed. But behind those closed curtains, she was living a life no one could imagine. I didn't mean to get involved. I didn't mean to see what I saw. But one night, curiosity pulled me closer. And what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about grief, about desire, and about secrets people will take to their grave. This isn't just a story. It's a confession, from someone who watched it all unfold. Stay with me. Because what this widow was hiding, will leave you questioning everything. I never intended to tell this story. Some things are better left buried, folded into the quiet corners of memory where they can't hurt anyone. But then again, silence has a way of becoming heavier than truth. And her silence was suffocating. I met her on a rainy Thursday evening. She lived 2 houses away from mine, though I had never seen her before that day. That alone should have told me something. In a neighborhood like ours, where routine ruled everything and people knew each other's habits better than their own, invisibility was not normal. She stood by her gate, dressed in black, not the kind worn for mourning, but the kind chosen deliberately. Elegant. Controlled. Untouchable. I think I've seen you before, I said, mostly out of politeness. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. No, she replied softly. You haven't. That should have been the end of it. A brief exchange between strangers. But something about her stayed with me. I learned later that she was a widow. Her husband had died 3 years earlier, under circumstances no one seemed eager to discuss. Some said it was illness. Others whispered it was sudden. But no one ever spoke to her directly about it. She didn't attend gatherings. She didn't entertain visitors. Her house remained quiet, almost unnaturally so. At night, though, things changed. It began with small observations. Lights flickering on at odd hours. Cars pulling up briefly. Engines idling, then leaving just as quickly. Shadows moving behind drawn curtains. Nothing obvious. Nothing anyone could accuse her of. But enough to make a man curious. And I was curious. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself standing by my window, staring at her house. The rain had started again, soft against the pavement. Her living room light was on. And then I saw it. A silhouette. Not hers. A man. He stood close to her. Too close to be casual. Their movements were slow, deliberate. Intimate in a way that didn't need explanation. I should have looked away. Instead, I watched. Not out of desire, but confusion. This was a woman the world believed to be frozen in grief. A widow still wrapped in silence. But that night told a different story. And it was only the beginning. After that night, I couldn't unsee it. Her life wasn't quiet. It was hidden. Once you notice a pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. What once seemed like coincidence slowly reveals itself as intention. She had a routine. Different nights. Different visitors. Never the same car twice in a week. Never the same time exactly, but always late. Always when the world had settled into sleep. And always gone before dawn. I tried to convince myself it was none of my business. That whatever she did behind those walls was hers alone. But curiosity has a way of turning into something else. Something heavier. Something closer to obsession. One evening, I saw her during the day again. She was walking back from the market, carrying a small bag, her expression calm and unreadable. Good afternoon, I said, stepping out deliberately this time. She paused, studying me for a moment. You watch my house, she said. It wasn't a question. I felt my throat tighten. I don't. You do, she interrupted gently. Not angry. Not accusing. Just certain. There was no point denying it. I noticed things, I admitted. She held my gaze longer than was comfortable. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Most people don't, she said. We walked together in silence for a while. You live alone? I asked. I live exactly how I choose, she replied. There was something in her tone that stopped further questions. Not defensive, just final. But before she reached her gate, she turned back to me. People think they understand loneliness, she said quietly. They think it looks like silence, like stillness. She shook her head slightly. They're wrong. That night, the lights in her house stayed on longer than usual. And for the first time, I didn't watch from a distance. I stood outside. Closer than I had ever been. Close enough to hear faint laughter through the walls. Close enough to realize that whatever she was doing, it wasn't reckless. It was controlled, deliberate, and deeply personal. It happened without warning. A soft knock on my door, just past midnight. I knew it was her before I even opened it. She stood there, the same composed expression, though something in her eyes had shifted. Less guarded. More decided. I thought you might still be awake, she said. I usually am. A pause. Then, simply, come over. No explanation. No hesitation. Just an invitation. I should have refused. But I didn't. Her house was exactly as I imagined, neat, quiet, almost too perfect. No photographs. No signs of a past life. It felt less like a home and more like a space carefully maintained to avoid memory. Drink? She asked. I nodded. We sat across from each other, the silence stretching, but not uncomfortable. You're wondering, she said. About what? About me. I didn't deny it. She leaned back slightly, studying me the same way she had from the beginning. My husband, she began, was a good man. At least, that's what everyone believed. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just clarity. He loved control. Structure. Routine. Everything had its place. Including me. Her fingers traced the edge of her glass. When he died, people expected me to break. To disappear into grief. She looked up at me then. But what they don't understand is that I had already been disappearing long before he was gone. The room felt heavier. So this, I gestured vaguely around us, meaning everything I had seen, everything I had suspected. This is freedom? I asked. She shook her head. No, she said softly. This is discovery. I didn't become part of her world. Not in the way you might think. What she allowed me to see was enough. Her life wasn't chaos. It wasn't reckless indulgence. It was structured, just differently than before. She chose who entered her space. She chose when. She chose how much of herself she revealed. There were no attachments. No expectations. No illusions. It's not about them, she told me once. It's about me remembering who I am, without being defined by someone else. I began to understand. Her visitors weren't replacing anything. They were pieces of something she had never been allowed to explore. And yet, there was always a boundary. A line she never crossed emotionally. I don't belong to anyone anymore, she said. There was power in that. But also, distance. Because the truth was, for all her freedom, she remained alone. Not lonely. But separate. Untouchable in a way that had nothing to do with physical closeness. People eventually noticed. Not everything. But enough. Whispers began. Subtle at first. Then louder. She didn't react. Didn't defend herself. Didn't explain. Because she didn't need to. One evening, I found her standing outside again, just like the first time. Do you regret it? I asked. She considered the question carefully. No, she said. Not even a little? She smiled faintly. Regret belongs to people who live for others, she replied. I stopped doing that a long time ago. There was a calm certainty in her voice that I couldn't argue with. Will you stay? I asked. She looked at her house, then back at me. For now. That was the only answer she ever gave. And maybe it was enough. Because some lives aren't meant to be understood. Only witnessed. And hers was never quiet. Just hidden. So now you tell me. Was she wrong for choosing that life? Or was she finally free, for the first time in years? Some secrets don't destroy people. Sometimes, they save them. If this story made you think, question, or even feel uncomfortable, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even darker, and even closer to the truth than you expect. And remember, not every quiet person is innocent. And not every hidden life is a mistake. Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. This content is intended for mature audiences and explores complex emotional and psychological themes.